Stop what you're doing for just a moment and grab any Australian 50-cent coins you have nearby. Look closely at the date, the design, the lettering, and especially the tiny details that most people never notice. That ordinary-looking 50-cent piece could be much more interesting than it appears. While most Australian 50-cent coins are worth exactly what they say on the face, a small number can become highly desirable to collectors because of unusual varieties, minting errors, scarcity, or exceptional condition. Today, we're going on a hunt for 4 of the most fascinating and potentially valuable Australian 50-cent coins that collectors love to search for. These aren't simply old coins sitting in a collection. They are pieces of Australian history with stories that can make even experienced collectors stop and take a second look. Some rare examples have attracted serious attention in the collector market, while unusual errors and scarce varieties can command prices far above their original face value. And here's the exciting part. You don't need to own a huge collection to start looking. A coin hiding inside an old jar, a forgotten box, a family collection, or a pile of Australian change could contain a detail you've never noticed before. So keep your eyes open, because we're going to show you exactly what makes these coins interesting, what features collectors look for, and why certain examples can become so valuable. Before we reveal the first coin, make sure you subscribe to Rare US Coin Secret and turn on notifications for more rare coin discoveries, valuable varieties, and hidden treasures. Now take a close look at your Australian 50-cent coins, because our countdown starts right now with number 1. Stop for a moment and take a close look at your old Australian coins, because the coin we're exploring today is one that deserves much more attention than most people realize. We're talking about the Australian 50-cent 1979 coin in extra fine condition. A classic decimal coin that has been sitting quietly in collections, drawers, coin jars, and old family savings for decades. To the casual eye, it may simply look like an old 50-cent piece. But to collectors, an attractive example represents Australian history, beautiful craftsmanship, and the possibility of discovering something far more interesting than its original face value. If you enjoy finding hidden treasures in old coins, this is definitely a coin you will want to examine carefully. The Australian 50-cent denomination has a fascinating history that stretches back to the beginning of the country's decimal currency era. The 12-sided 50-cent design quickly became one of Australia's most recognizable coins, and it remains an important part of Australian numismatic collecting today. By 1979, Australians had already been using decimal currency for more than a decade, and the 50-cent coin had become a familiar part of everyday life. Millions of these coins moved through shops, businesses, homes, and savings jars, creating a huge historical record of ordinary Australian life. The 1979 issue belongs to an important period in Australia's decimal coin history. During this era, the Royal Australian Mint was producing coins that combined practical everyday currency with distinctive national designs. Today, collectors look back at these coins with increasing appreciation because they represent a period that is now several decades in the past. Holding a 1979 50-cent coin gives collectors a direct physical connection to Australia during the late 1970s. One of the first things that immediately attracts attention is the famous 12-sided shape. This unusual shape gives the Australian 50-cent coin an identity that is instantly recognizable. Unlike ordinary circular coins, the 12-sided design has strong visual character and makes the denomination especially popular among collectors. Even after decades of circulation, the distinctive shape remains one of the easiest ways to identify this historic Australian coin. The obverse of the 1979 50-cent coin carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, reflecting Australia's constitutional and historical heritage during the period. The portrait was carefully engraved to create a strong and recognizable image that could withstand everyday circulation. On an extra fine example, much of the important detail remains clearly visible, allowing collectors to appreciate the craftsmanship that went into the original coin. Turn the coin over, and you'll find the famous Australian coat of arms. The kangaroo and emu stand proudly beside the national shield beneath the Commonwealth Star, creating a design that represents Australia's national identity. This powerful reverse design is one of the reasons the Australian 50-cent series remains so popular. The combination of the kangaroo, emu, shield, and star creates a coin that is instantly connected with Australia. Extra fine condition makes the 1979 50-cent coin particularly interesting to collectors. An extra fine example has experienced circulation, but still retains strong details across the major design elements. The portrait, lettering, date, and coat of arms remain sufficiently defined to create an attractive overall appearance. For collectors who enjoy historical coins that still show their original character, this level of preservation can be very appealing. The color and surface of an older coin can also influence its visual appeal. A 1979 50-cent coin may display silver-gray surfaces, subtle golden tones, or natural changes developed through decades of storage and circulation. Natural toning can make individual coins look different from one another, giving each example its own personality. Collectors often enjoy comparing these differences when searching for the most attractive coin. Another important quality is originality. A coin that has retained its natural surfaces can be particularly enjoyable to own because it preserves the authentic appearance developed throughout its life. Collectors generally appreciate coins that have not been aggressively polished or cleaned. The goal is to preserve the coin's history rather than remove it, allowing future collectors to see the piece much as it naturally aged. The Royal Australian Mint has a long tradition of producing attractive and carefully detailed coinage, and the 1979 50-cent issue reflects that tradition. The engraving is designed to remain recognizable through everyday use, while the composition provides durability for circulation. Even decades later, an extra fine example can still display impressive details across both sides of the coin. There is also something exciting about the age of this coin. A 1979 50-cent piece is now more than 4 decades old, meaning it has survived an enormous amount of everyday change. Many examples were lost, heavily worn, damaged, or simply forgotten. The coins that remain in attractive condition become increasingly interesting to collectors because they represent survivors from an earlier period of Australian commerce. Collector demand is influenced by several factors, and condition is one of the most important. An attractive extra fine example can stand out from heavily circulated pieces because it offers stronger detail and better overall eye appeal. Collectors building date sets often search for examples that look clean, balanced, and original, making well-preserved coins more desirable than ordinary worn pieces. The possibility of discovering an unusual example adds another level of excitement. Collectors carefully examine older 50-cent coins for genuine mint errors, unusual strikes, doubled features, off-center strikes, or other authenticated production abnormalities. When a legitimate mint error is confirmed, its rarity can make it considerably more desirable than a normal example of the same date. This is why you should never judge an old coin only by its date. 2 coins carrying exactly the same year can have completely different collector appeal depending on their condition, surfaces, strike quality, and possible varieties. A normal circulated example may have modest value, while an exceptional certified example or a genuine rare error can attract much stronger attention. The market value of the 1979 Australian 50-cent coin depends heavily on its condition and specific characteristics. Ordinary circulated examples are generally inexpensive, while attractive higher-grade pieces can command a premium. An extra fine example may typically fall around the few dollar range to the low tens of Australian dollars, depending on its exact quality and current collector demand. Exceptional certified examples or authenticated varieties can bring considerably more. Collectors should also understand that auction prices can vary dramatically from one coin to another. A coin with an unusual feature, outstanding grade, or particularly attractive appearance may receive strong competition when several collectors want the same piece. This is why published price guides should be treated as useful references rather than guaranteed selling prices. For anyone searching through old Australian coins, the first step is simple. Examine the date carefully. Make sure the coin really is from 1979, then look closely at the portrait and reverse design. Check the lettering, date, edges, and major design elements under good lighting. A magnifying glass can be extremely useful for spotting details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Another important tip is to avoid cleaning the coin. A coin that looks dirty or aged should not automatically be polished. Cleaning can permanently change the original surface and may reduce collector appeal. Instead, preserve the coin in its existing condition, and if you believe you have an unusual or especially valuable example, consider having it examined by a qualified numismatist. Storage is equally important. If you find an attractive 1979 50-cent coin, place it in an appropriate protective holder and handle it carefully by the edges. Avoid unnecessary touching of the main surfaces. Good storage can protect the coin from scratches, contamination, and additional environmental damage, helping preserve its condition for the future. Professional grading can become particularly useful when a coin appears to be in exceptional condition. A recognized grading service can authenticate the coin and assign a standardized grade, giving collectors a clearer understanding of its condition. Certification can become especially important for higher-value coins, unusual varieties, and potential mint errors. The excitement surrounding old Australian coins continues to grow because collecting is not simply about money. It is also about history, discovery, and the satisfaction of owning something that has survived from another era. A 1979 50-cent coin may have passed through countless transactions before eventually finding its way into a collector's hands. Imagine the journey of one of these coins. It could have been placed into a shopkeeper's cash register in 1979, carried home by a parent, saved inside a family jar, passed to another generation, and eventually discovered by a collector decades later. That journey is what transforms an ordinary piece of currency into a fascinating historical object. The Australian 50-cent series is especially attractive to collectors because there are so many dates and commemorative issues to explore. Many enthusiasts attempt to build complete collections, while others focus on particular years, conditions, varieties, or designs. This continuing interest helps keep Australian decimal coins active within the collecting community. The 1979 issue is therefore more than a simple old 50-cent piece. It represents Australia's late 1970s decimal era and carries the unmistakable national imagery of the kangaroo, emu, shield, and Commonwealth star. For collectors interested in Australian history, this combination of design and age makes the coin an enjoyable addition to a collection. One of the most important lessons for new collectors is to learn before buying or selling. Study photographs of genuine examples, learn the basics of grading, compare auction results, and understand the difference between a normal coin and a genuine mint error. Knowledge helps collectors recognize opportunities while avoiding unrealistic claims about value. If you believe you have a particularly unusual 1979 50-cent coin, don't rush to sell it based on a dramatic online price claim. Compare the coin carefully with reliable references, and when appropriate, seek an independent professional opinion. Authenticity and condition are extremely important, especially when significant money is involved. The dream of finding a coin worth a fortune is one of the reasons many people become interested in collecting. While a normal 1979 Australian 50-cent coin is not a guaranteed fortune, exceptional discoveries can still be exciting. A rare authenticated mint error, an outstanding certified grade, or a particularly unusual variety can completely change the collecting story surrounding an individual coin. That possibility is what makes searching so enjoyable. Every old coin can encourage another question. Where did it come from? How long did it circulate? How well has it survived? Does it have an unusual feature? Could it be a better example than the other coins in the same collection? These questions turn a simple hobby into an exciting treasure hunt. For collectors, preservation is ultimately about protecting history. The 1979 Australian 50-cent coin is part of Australia's decimal story, and every surviving example contributes to that history. Whether your coin is a normal circulated piece or an exceptional high-grade specimen, keeping it safe ensures that future generations can appreciate the design and story behind it. As interest in Australian decimal coins continues around the world, attractive examples remain enjoyable targets for collectors. The combination of Australia's iconic national imagery, the distinctive 12-sided shape, and the age of the 1979 issue gives this coin a strong place within the broader story of Australian numismatics. So before you spend an old Australian 50-cent coin, take a moment to look closely at it. Check the date, study the surfaces, examine the design, and look for anything unusual. You may discover nothing extraordinary, but you may also discover a beautifully preserved piece of history or an interesting variety that deserves further research. The Australian 50-cent 1979 coin is a wonderful reminder that value is not always about a huge number printed on a price guide. Sometimes the real treasure is the history, craftsmanship, and story preserved inside a small piece of metal. And for collectors, the possibility of discovering an exceptional example is what keeps the search exciting. Next up, the Australian 50-cent 1976 coin in dirty circulated condition, a classic piece of Australian decimal currency that has survived more than 4 decades of everyday history. It may look like an ordinary old coin covered with dirt and signs of circulation, but collectors know that age, design, preservation, and unusual characteristics can make certain examples especially interesting. Before you place an old 50-cent coin back into a drawer or spend it without a second thought, take a closer look, because this little piece of metal carries a fascinating story. The 1976 Australian 50-cent coin belongs to an important period in Australia's decimal currency history. Decimal currency had been introduced only a decade earlier, in 1966, And by the middle of the 1970s, the new system had become a normal part of everyday Australian life. The 50-cent denomination was already familiar to millions of people, moving through shops, businesses, transport systems, and family savings. Today, collectors look at these coins differently because they represent a genuine piece of Australia's economic and social history. When this coin entered circulation in 1976, nobody could know how many decades it would survive. Some examples were heavily used and eventually disappeared, while others were placed into jars, drawers, collections, and family savings. The surviving coins provide a fascinating record of the everyday economy of the 1970s. Holding one today allows collectors to connect directly with a period when Australia's decimal currency was still relatively young. One of the most remarkable features of the Australian 50-cent coin is its famous 12-sided shape. This unusual design immediately separates it from ordinary round coins and gives the denomination a distinctive Australian identity. The 12 sides also make the coin easy to recognize, even when it has become dirty or heavily circulated. For collectors, this unusual shape is an important part of the appeal and one of the characteristics that makes Australian 50-cent coins instantly recognizable. The obverse of the 1976 50-cent coin features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, reflecting Australia's constitutional heritage during the period. The portrait is carefully engraved and surrounded by lettering that identifies the country and denomination. On a circulated example, some details may show wear, but an attractive coin can still preserve enough definition to reveal the craftsmanship of the original design. The reverse is equally important because it displays Australia's famous coat of arms. The kangaroo and emu stand on either side of the national shield beneath the Commonwealth Star, creating one of the most recognizable designs in Australian coinage. This powerful national imagery gives the coin historical importance while making it especially attractive to collectors who appreciate Australian symbols. Now let's talk about the dirty condition of the coin, because this is where collectors need to pay attention. A dirty appearance does not automatically mean a coin has no collector interest. Dirt, environmental exposure, and natural aging can create a distinctive appearance on an older circulated coin. The important thing is to understand whether the surfaces are naturally aged or whether the coin has been damaged, cleaned, or altered. A dirty coin can still preserve important details underneath its aged appearance. The date, portrait, lettering, and coat of arms should all be examined carefully. Good lighting and magnification can help reveal details that are difficult to see at first glance. Sometimes the most interesting part of an old coin is hidden beneath an ordinary-looking surface. Collectors generally value originality, which is why cleaning an old coin should be avoided. Scrubbing, polishing, or using chemicals can permanently change the coin's surface and remove the natural character that collectors appreciate. If you discover a dirty 1976 50-cent coin, the safest approach is to leave it in its existing condition and investigate its history and characteristics before taking any action. The 1976 issue is also interesting because it belongs to Australia's classic circulating 50-cent series. Collectors often build date collections that include examples from different years, and the 1976 coin can become an important part of such a set. The demand for complete collections creates continuing interest in older Australian decimal issues. Condition plays an important role when collectors compare coins. A heavily circulated example may have limited market value, while a coin retaining strong details and attractive surfaces can be much more desirable. This is why collectors should examine the entire coin rather than judging it only by its age or appearance. An extra fine or higher grade example would generally attract more attention than a heavily worn coin, but even circulated examples can be enjoyable and collectible. The key is preservation. Strong lettering, a clearly visible date, good portrait detail, and a well-defined coat of arms all contribute to overall eye appeal. Another area collectors carefully investigate is the possibility of mint errors. Genuine errors created during the manufacturing process can sometimes be much more desirable than ordinary examples. Off-center strikes, unusual planchets, doubled features, and other authenticated production errors can attract serious collector interest. However, an unusual appearance should always be verified before assuming it is a valuable mint error. This is where magnification can become extremely useful. A small coin loop can help you inspect the lettering, date, edges, portrait, and reverse design. Carefully comparing your coin with known normal examples can help identify characteristics that deserve additional research. Patience is one of the most important skills in successful coin hunting. The market value of a 1976 Australian 50-cent coin depends on several factors. Condition, Originality, eye appeal, certification, and unusual characteristics can all influence what collectors are willing to pay. Standard circulated examples are generally modestly valued, while higher-grade coins and authenticated varieties can attract stronger premiums. For a typical circulated 1976 Australian 50-cent coin, a reasonable market expectation is generally around 1 to 5 Australian dollars, depending on appearance and current demand. Better preserved examples can bring more, particularly when they display strong details and attractive surfaces. Exceptional certified coins or authenticated mint errors can reach substantially higher values in specialist markets, sometimes into the hundreds or more depending on the exact variety and grade. It is important to remember that an advertised price is not automatically the same as a real market value. Collectors should look at actual completed sales, reputable auction results, and trusted coin references when estimating value. This approach gives you a much more realistic understanding of what buyers are actually paying. The exciting part is that a coin does not need to be extremely rare to be interesting. Historical importance, attractive design, strong condition, and collector demand can all contribute to desirability. The 1976 50-cent coin combines several of these qualities, making it an enjoyable piece for anyone interested in Australia's decimal history. The Australian 50-cent series has a particularly strong following because collectors can explore many different dates, designs, and commemorative issues. Some collectors concentrate on standard circulation issues, while others search specifically for varieties, errors, or high-grade examples. This broad collecting community helps maintain interest in older 50-cent coins. Auction markets can also provide useful information about collector demand. When an exceptional Australian 50-cent coin appears in a major sale, collectors may compete strongly for it, particularly if it has outstanding preservation or an authenticated rare feature. This demonstrates why quality can sometimes be more important than simply owning an old coin. For anyone who discovers a 1976 50-cent coin, the first step should be careful identification. Confirm the date, inspect both sides, look at the edge, and examine the surfaces under good lighting. Check whether the coin has unusual characteristics that distinguish it from normal examples. Do not rush to clean the coin just because it looks dirty. Natural aging and circulation history can be part of the coin's appeal, and cleaning may permanently affect its collector desirability. Preservation should always come before appearance when dealing with older collectible coins. Proper storage is another important part of collecting. A protective holder or suitable coin capsule can help protect the piece from additional scratches, environmental exposure, and unnecessary handling. When handling the coin, hold it by the edges rather than touching the main surfaces. If your coin appears unusually well preserved or seems to contain a possible mint error, professional evaluation can be worthwhile. An experienced numismatist or reputable grading service can help determine authenticity, condition, and whether an unusual feature is genuinely connected to the minting process. The history behind this coin makes it especially enjoyable to collect. The 1976 50-cent coin was produced during a period when Australia's decimal currency system was becoming firmly established. It represents everyday Australian life during the 1970s and connects today's collectors with an earlier generation. Imagine how many places this little coin may have traveled during its lifetime. It could have passed through a family grocery store purchase, rested in a shopkeeper's till, been carried home in someone's pocket, and eventually disappeared into a savings jar. Decades later, it can reappear as a collectible piece of history. That journey is one of the reasons coin collecting remains such a fascinating hobby. You're not simply collecting metal, you're preserving objects that have traveled through real communities and real lives. The 1976 50-cent coin is a wonderful example of how ordinary currency can eventually become a historical collectible. As interest in Australian decimal coins continues, collectors are paying closer attention to the quality and originality of surviving examples. Well-preserved coins, unusual varieties, and genuine mint errors can attract significant interest, while ordinary circulated pieces remain affordable entry points for people beginning their collections. The dream of finding a coin worth an extraordinary fortune is what makes treasure hunting exciting, but smart collectors understand that research is the key. Instead of believing every dramatic price claim online, examine reliable sales records and learn what actually makes a coin rare. That knowledge can turn an exciting discovery into a genuinely informed collecting decision. The Australian 50-cent 1976 coin may have started its life as ordinary currency, but today it represents history, craftsmanship, and the fascinating story of Australia's decimal era. Whether your example is dirty and circulated or beautifully preserved, It deserves to be examined carefully before being dismissed as ordinary pocket change. So the next time you discover an old Australian 50-cent coin, don't immediately put it back into circulation. Look at the date, inspect the design, examine the surfaces, and search for anything unusual. Your coin may not be a fortune, but it could be an attractive historical piece or an interesting variety deserving a permanent place in your collection. Next up, the Australian 50-cent 2007 issue. Today we're looking at this fascinating coin in extra fine condition, a piece of modern Australian decimal currency that may look familiar but still has plenty of history behind it. More than a decade has passed since this coin entered circulation, and collectors continue examining older 50-cent pieces for attractive examples, high grades, unusual characteristics, and varieties. So before you overlook an older 50-cent coin, take a moment to examine the date, the design, and the condition, because you may be looking at an interesting collectible. The 2007 Australian 50-cent coin belongs to the continuing standard coat of arms series. According to the Royal Australian Mint, approximately 19.9 million standard 50-cent coins were produced for circulation in 2007. That makes the date an interesting part of Australia's modern decimal coin history, while also showing why condition and unusual characteristics are especially important when discussing its collector value. By 2007, Australia's decimal currency system had already been established for more than 4 decades. The 50-cent denomination remained one of the country's most recognizable coins, and its distinctive shape continued making it instantly identifiable. The coin passed through shops, businesses, cash registers, wallets, and collections, becoming another small record of everyday Australian life during the early 21st century. The 50-cent denomination itself has an especially interesting history. Australia's decimal currency was introduced in 1966, and the 50-cent coin became one of the key denominations of the new system. Its unusual 12-sided shape gave it a distinctive appearance that separated it from many other circulating coins. Even today, collectors can identify an Australian 50-cent coin almost instantly because of that unmistakable design. One of the most important visual features of the 2007 coin is its 12-sided shape. This design gives the coin a strong personality and makes it one of Australia's most recognizable decimal denominations. The shape also contributes to its collecting appeal because Australian 50-cent coins are immediately distinguishable from ordinary circular coins. The obverse carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Ian Rank Broadley. The portrait represents an important period in Australian coinage and provides a beautiful example of modern numismatic engraving. On an extra fine example, much of the portrait detail remains clearly visible, allowing collectors to appreciate the craftsmanship even though the coin has experienced circulation. The reverse features the Commonwealth coat of arms, with the kangaroo and emu standing beside the shield beneath the Commonwealth star. The design was sculpted by Stuart Devlin and became one of the defining images of Australia's 50-cent circulation coins. This national symbolism gives the coin an important visual connection to Australia and makes it particularly enjoyable for collectors of Australian decimal currency. The composition is another interesting part of the coin. The standard 2007 50-cent circulation issue is made from copper nickel, specifically 75% copper, and 25% nickel. It weighs approximately 15.55 grams and measures about 31.5 millimeters across. These specifications help collectors identify the standard issue and distinguish it from unusual pieces that may require further examination. Extra fine condition gives this 2007 coin an attractive balance between history and preservation. An extra fine coin has experienced circulation but retains substantial design detail. The portrait remains recognizable, the lettering remains clear, and the coat of arms continues displaying strong features. For collectors, this combination can create a pleasing example of a coin that has genuine circulation history while still remaining visually appealing. The surfaces of an older circulated coin can also add character. Depending on how the coin was stored and handled, it may display different shades and natural changes across the metal. Collectors often enjoy comparing the surfaces of different examples because no two circulated coins necessarily age in exactly the same way. Originality is another quality worth appreciating. A coin that retains its natural surface can provide a more authentic representation of how it survived through everyday circulation. Collectors generally have good reason to be cautious about aggressive cleaning or polishing, because altering an original surface can affect the coin's appearance and collector desirability. The 2007 50-cent coin is also interesting because it belongs to a period when Australian decimal collecting was becoming increasingly popular. Collectors were not simply searching for old pre-decimal coins anymore. Modern decimal issues had become an important collecting field in their own right. This helped create continuing interest in dates, varieties, commemorative issues, and high-grade examples. When evaluating collector demand, condition becomes particularly important. A common coin in ordinary circulated condition may have limited premium value, while a sharply preserved example can be much more interesting. Extra fine condition gives collectors an opportunity to own a coin with strong remaining details, without requiring the extremely high prices that can sometimes accompany top-certified grades. The 2007 issue also demonstrates why mintage numbers matter. With approximately 19.9 million circulation coins produced, the standard date is not considered an extremely scarce issue. Instead, the potential for stronger collector value is more closely connected to exceptional condition, certification, or a genuine unusual variety. This is where careful examination becomes exciting. Collectors sometimes investigate older coins for genuine minting abnormalities. Unusual strikes, doubled features, off-center production, or other authenticated errors can make an individual coin considerably more interesting than an ordinary example. Any unusual feature should be properly verified before a collector assumes it is a valuable mint error. The date is one of the first things to check. Look closely at the 2007 marking and then examine both sides of the coin. Pay attention to the portrait, lettering, coat of arms, edge, and overall strike. Good lighting and magnification can make it much easier to notice details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Current market value depends on several factors, including grade, originality, demand, and whether the coin has been professionally certified. Current price guide information lists standard 2007 examples at relatively modest levels in circulated grades, while certified high-grade pieces can command higher amounts. For example, one current guide lists around US $12.40 for M-65, approximately US $15 for M-66, US $17.60 for M-67, and up to about US $105 for M-70. These figures are guide values rather than guaranteed selling prices and can change with market conditions. That difference between an ordinary circulated coin and an exceptional certified coin is important. It shows why collectors should never judge every example of the same date as having identical value. Grade can dramatically change desirability, particularly when a coin reaches the highest certified levels. Auction performance can also differ from guide values. A rare variety, authenticated mint error, or exceptional specimen may attract competition from collectors who specifically want that particular coin. This is why serious collectors study both grading information and actual market activity when researching unusual pieces. One of the best things about the 2007 50-cent coin is that it offers an accessible entry into Australian decimal collecting. A collector does not need to begin with an extremely rare coin. Building knowledge through ordinary examples can teach you about designs, dates, grading, surfaces, and minting characteristics before moving into more advanced collecting. If you discover a 2007 50-cent coin, take your time before making any decision about it. Confirm the date, examine both sides, and look carefully at the surfaces. If something appears unusual, compare it with a normal example and consider professional identification before assuming that the feature represents a valuable error. Avoid aggressively cleaning the coin. Even if an old coin appears dull or dirty, its original surface can be important to collectors. Cleaning can create scratches or unnatural surfaces that permanently change the appearance. Preservation is usually a better approach than trying to make an old coin look brand new. Storage also matters. A suitable protective holder can reduce unnecessary handling and help protect the coin from scratches and environmental exposure. When examining the coin, handle it carefully by the edges rather than repeatedly touching the main surfaces. For collectors who believe they have an exceptional specimen, professional grading can provide an independent assessment of condition and authenticity. Certification can be particularly useful when a coin appears to be in a very high grade or has an unusual feature that may significantly affect its collector interest. The story behind the coin is just as fascinating as its market value. Think about how many transactions a 2007 50-cent coin could have participated in. It may have been carried in a wallet, placed inside a cash register, saved in a household jar, or passed between generations before eventually reaching a collector. That history is what makes coin collecting so enjoyable. You are not simply collecting pieces of metal. You are preserving small objects connected to real people, places, and moments. The 2007 50-cent coin represents an everyday chapter in Australia's modern history. The broader 50-cent series also gives collectors plenty of opportunities to explore. Standard coat of arms issues, commemorative designs, different years, high-grade specimens, and authenticated errors can all provide different collecting paths. This variety keeps the hobby interesting and gives collectors plenty of reasons to continue searching. The dream of discovering a coin worth a huge fortune is certainly exciting, but the smartest collectors understand that rarity must be demonstrated rather than assumed. A normal 2007 50-cent coin is not a guaranteed millionaire coin, but an exceptional certified specimen or genuinely rare mint error can be significantly more desirable than a standard circulated example. This is why knowledge is the real advantage in coin collecting. The more you learn about dates, designs, mintages, grading, varieties, and authentic errors, the easier it becomes to recognize coins that deserve further attention. Instead of simply looking for a huge price tag, you begin understanding why collectors value certain pieces. The Australian 50-cent 2007 coin is therefore a fascinating piece of modern Australian numismatics. Its distinctive 12-sided shape, Queen Elizabeth II portrait, Commonwealth coat of arms, copper-nickel composition, and place within Australia's decimal history all give it lasting collector appeal. Its standard circulation mintage also makes condition and unusual characteristics especially important when evaluating individual examples. So the next time you come across an Australian 50-cent coin dated 2007, don't simply glance at it and move on. Take a closer look at the date, the surfaces, the portrait, the coat of arms, and the overall condition. You may have a normal collectible, a particularly attractive example, or something unusual that deserves additional research. The real excitement of collecting comes from the discovery itself. A small coin can lead you into history, craftsmanship, research, and a deeper understanding of Australia's monetary heritage. Whether your 2007 50-cent coin remains a modest collectible or turns out to be an exceptional example, taking the time to investigate it can make the hobby much more rewarding. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Australian 50-cent 2007 coin. Keep looking closely, keep learning about Australian numismatics, and always preserve interesting coins carefully. The next fascinating discovery may not be sitting behind glass in a museum. It could be waiting quietly inside an old collection, a forgotten coin jar, or a handful of change. Happy collecting and good luck with your next exciting find.